Nick, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I guess we will look at this game starting with the Louisville Cardinals. They're now up to number 7 in both polls. We've seen 2 games from them. They've climbed the polls. Everybody seems to love them. If you could put your finger on one reason, there are probably many, but one reason why this team is so overrated, what would that be?
That's a tough opening question. I don't think they're overrated by any means. I don't think they're underrated either. I still think I want to see them play against real competition. And Kentucky is a team that really, I was telling you before, I feel like we don't know a lot about them yet. They came out and played bad against WKU. Then they look like, a Super Bowl team against a bad Miami of Ohio team. But I'm wondering what Kentucky's going to look like once they see a real football team on Saturday.
How much, Kentucky fans will look at this game and say Louisville's overrated. How much of this team is what we've seen the last 3 games, the 2 wins this season and the Sugar Bowl? Is there any fear that maybe they're the team that's played down to the competition last season when they struggled?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, I remember last year at Game 9 when they lost, even going into that game, they were undefeated at 8-0. But at the same time, you still don't know how good they are because they're playing Southern Miss and FIU, playing those teams really close. But the one question going into this year was, have they matured? Are they going to stop playing down to the competition? And they won 44-7 against Eastern Kentucky, but they didn't play well. They looked, they didn't look crisp. And if you're a Kentucky fan, I can see the side where you would say, okay, this team really they beat a bad team handily, but they didn't really look good doing it. And I could see why even an outsider would say that they may be overrated. But I'm hoping once they start playing, an SEC team like Kentucky, there'll be some motivation and they'll bury them.
For both teams, Roy, because of Louisville's schedule and because Kentucky lost in Week 1 against Western Kentucky, whoever loses this game is probably eliminated from national title consideration, I would say. I don't think that's a stretch. So very important game for both teams. If Kentucky is going to win this game, what are maybe some weaknesses on Louisville's side that Kentucky should maybe attack with their offense or their defense?
The one thing that, if I'm a Kentucky fan, the one thing that would give me any kind of optimism is that Louisville's offensive line has been inconsistent this year, and they just look bad against an Eastern Kentucky FCS team. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the defensive line for Kentucky is supposed to be one of their strengths. I mean, Zadarius Smith, I think he leads the country in sacks. So if I'm a Kentucky fan, I'm looking at that matchup and at least getting a little bit excited, but not much.
The flip side of that is when I look at Kentucky's defense, that secondary really struggles. And, of course, Teddy Bridgewater is a tremendous player. Great wideouts for Louisville. What is the key to slowing down that U of L offensive attack, especially the passing game?
That's a good question because, honestly, I haven't seen anybody do it yet, at least not this year. I think if Louisville would have went heavy in the passing game against CKU, they probably could have scored 70 points. They did whatever they wanted against Ohio. I'm hoping Mark Stoops has the answer to that question.
Are you buying any of we talked on the show yesterday, there were some struggles with the running game against Eastern Kentucky. Yards per carries were down. Michael Dyer averaged about 3 yards per carry. Any concern about that running game long term, and particularly for Saturday's football game?
No, there's definitely concern. I don't think it's because of the personnel in the backfield. I think it's more of the offensive line holding their blocks. I mean, honestly, I watched that game on Saturday, and it was kind of a miserable performance from that offensive line. They looked disinterested, weren't giving much effort at all, which is frustrating to see. But I think they've got obviously talented running backs. But Charlie Strong said this week that he wants to kind of final it down to 2 guys where they're going to get most of the carries. So of the 3, Dominique Brown, Norris Perry, Michael Dyer, one of them is going to be the odd man left out. But they're only going to be able to, to play as good as that offensive line is going to let them. I don't think there's concern with those guys, but the overall running game, it was pretty bad. When you get outrushed by EKU, there's obviously some concern.
In last year's game, I remember afterwards, we had a live call-in show. People were a little critical of Charlie Strong because they thought he could run the score up a little more, and almost like he called off the Dogs against Joker. What are you expecting in this game? The spread went from 7.5 up to anywhere, depending where you look, 13, 14, 15 points. How big of a gap is there between these 2 teams, and what are you expecting to see from them on Saturday?
I mean, if I look at the talent level and the experience factor and all that, the proven playmakers, I think Louisville's a 21-point better team. I just do. I think they're going to show that on Saturday. But the question is, when does Teddy Bridgewater come out? When you Kentucky obviously not supposed to be very good this year, but you are playing a BCS conference team, an FCC team. I think if you want to pad those Heisman numbers and all that, you would leave them in as long as you possibly can without letting it really look bad. But I do think there's going to be a difference this year as far as Charlie Strong kind of calling off the dogs. And, it's been noted this week, Charlie Strong and Mark Stoops, they're not necessarily friends, and they're not friends, but they don't really have a relationship. So you won't see I don't think you'll see the Teddy Bridgewater being pulled in the first quarter, or I'm sorry, in the fourth quarter. And as I mentioned, I just think Louisville is easily a 21-point better team.
This team, Louisville, is criticized, of course, for their schedule. If they're going to contend for a national title, there's been some discussion this week that Kentucky could maybe be, if not the best team on their schedule, one of the better teams. Are you buying that? The UK, even though they are not expected to do much, is one of the better teams. And does that make it more important for them to go out and show something nationally?
I'm certainly not buying that, but to be honest with you, I really don't know because, as I mentioned, they looked bad against WKU. They had a chance to win it, but they really just didn't play well. It looked like the same Joker Phillips team from last year. But then against Miami of Ohio, they look like a really good team. Looked like they made some improvements. Obviously, the quarterback switch was a huge deal. I kind of don't understand how Maxwell Smith wasn't the guy in the first game, but nonetheless, I really, the more I think about it, Kentucky could be a decent team. Kentucky could be that team that if they had Louisville's schedule, they might be able to get 5-6 wins. That's realistic. But against the schedule they have, they could be a 2-3 win team and still be one of the better teams. Not the best, but probably one of the top 5 teams on Louisville's schedule.
All right, final question before we let you go. The game is an early game on Saturday. How do you plan to spend your evening after Kentucky wins this football game?
Hopefully, after Louisville wins this football game, I will be celebrating in Lexington. Hopefully, I plan on going to the Penguin that night. So hopefully, it'll be the city will be painted red. I know there was a bunch of tickets still left, and the Louisville fans are trying to get those and get as many red T-shirts, red jerseys in the building as possible. I'll be celebrating, hopefully, with the rest of the Card Nation while Kentucky fans are drowning their sorrows.
All right, Nick Coffey from the Cardinal Connect. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure talking with you, man.
Thanks, man. Take care.